Well, here is another episode. Yet again, we're trying to bring thought leadership to our audience. Thank you for being here today. Marc and Miles, tell us a little bit about Zūm Rails, what you do. Set the foundation for our audience today.
So Zūm Rails is essentially a payment processing platform. We've essentially created a payment gateway with as many payment options as possible, whether you want to move money through EFT, through Visa Direct, through through Interact Bulk Transfer, Interact Request, and we have KYC tools and bundled it all together into a simple payment gateway. And the way we've structured it is it's very distributable. We have a whole software and wrapped it around very neat software. So as opposed to needing to go to 5 or 6 vendors to get all your different payment processing needs and onboarding needs, you just come to Zūm Rails and we have it all holistically covered in a simple to use API.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So, what's interesting is I hear that there's a very unique story, a very interesting story of how you two individuals met. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, it's so I was one of the founders of a company one of the original employees of a company called VersaPay. And I started there when it was like a few people in one room. And then I worked there for 8 years, and I actually built and managed their EFT business. And during that time, sort of finding ways to sell it, distribute it. 2 days after I decided to leave Toronto and come to PEI and got a buyout, essentially, VersaPay sends me an email introducing me to Miles. So me and VersaPay had this relationship. We're like, hey, just work with us still, but you can do whatever you want. And I meet Miles, and Miles works for a company called Flinks, and they do data aggregation, which is automating the onboarding, getting all the details. Because beforehand, it's like you're hoping people can read a void check. And then from there, we started talking. We'd never met for 3 years. And in this time, I kind of tell Miles, hey, I have this idea for how we can make payments in Canada actually work. Because right now, or even before then and still now, the innards are ugly. It's very messy. It's manual. It's file-based. You're trying to do a lot of stuff. Like we said earlier, there's EFT rails, then there's Interact and Visa Direct and MasterCard Direct, but they're not all in one. And Miles had the missing piece, essentially, of data aggregation. We wrapped it all up, and then we put an extra layer of software around it. And then after 3 years, we finally met, we went over it, and I lived in his parents' spare room for about a year while I was going back and forth. So yeah, technically, if you want to own shares in Zūm Rails, you have to have lived in Miles' parents' house. That's how.
Very nice.
Thankfully, my brother doesn't have shares, so not 100% sure.
That's cool. But asterisk post 2018.
Small side note also. Marc and I, our relationship started, we were just referring each other a lot of business because a lot of people who needed data aggregation needed payments and vice versa. But I remember one time I was almost 5-6 months into talking to him, I heard a really weird noise in the background. He might hate me for saying this, but I'm like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, it's just one of my goats. And he said it so casually. I'm just like, yeah, I hate when that happens. He was so casual about it. And then so I found out he lived on a 65-acre, well, he still does.
Yeah.
On a 65-acre farm in PEI. And so I had no idea he had goats and sheep and ducks and everything roaming around every call we had for 3 or 4 months.
There was one call where I remember I just finished chasing 20 sheep that got out, and I thought I was going to have I was just so out of breath. I'm I have a call in 5 minutes with Miles, and I think you remember it was I was telling you, I'm out of breath because it was. Yeah. We've had some interesting calls with regard to the animals.
Very nice, very nice. Yes, if you were to talk to some of my colleagues at Turnkey Lender, they would tell you about the chickens and the rooster that live behind me. So, yes, we have that sort of existence in our company as well. That sort of wildlife. So, I see your shirt there, Miles, and if I zoom in on the fine print, it says that you're making payments sexy. Now, with keeping safe and not bringing HR into the world, how does Zūm Rails make payments sexy? Yeah, so it started off with our UI UX guy. He created the logo and the design, and he created our iframe, and it's all looking so sleek and nice. But also, typically if you want to get a loan funded or you want to apply for an online for wealth management and buy stocks, everything would take 5-6 days from onboarding to reconciliation.
we figured out a flow and a sleek design, a great user experience that could be done in minutes. So like, I said to myself, like, what's sexier than that? Having the best user experience, no friction, instantly being able to fund your account. You could get a loan funded in minutes. You could invest in stocks within minutes. No more having to wait 5-6 days. So when we say making payments sexy, we're talking about the whole user experience and the whole flow from onboarding to reconciliation. Not talking about the employees at Zūm. Mm-hmm. So no need for HR in that one.
I appreciate that. I think at Turnkey Lender and our clients have recognized the importance of that customer experience, right? You guys are more on the back end of business that's already been captured, but on the front end, we have to all think about like the Amazon experience, right? We get their attention, we got to keep their attention, we got to get them approved, and we got to do it in as little time as possible, because there's more and more competition in the world today than ever before. So I really like how you guys have worked very diligently on making that process sexy and focusing exquisitely on the customer experience. Kudos.
I 100% agree with what you just said. It's like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to improve on what already exists. There's already a demand for it, but if you can improve it greatly, then you already have the demand because it's already created by the people who've done it before you. But if you could do it way better, then you just swoop right in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's 0.07 milliseconds is our top speed for pushing funds from one bank to another bank. So when you're trying to fund loans, that's a product differential for any of our partners is now that, hey, you can do that funding instantly instead of waiting hours. Because, if you're looking to get a loan online, odds are you want that money really quick. And then on the flip side, your money's off the street quicker, so that your risk profile goes down.
Yep, exactly. So what would be some additional differentiators that you guys position yourselves in the market from other payment providers?
I would, it's kind of almost twofold because, when the idea of Zūm came out, it wasn't just, we're going to be quicker and we're going to capture large parts of the market. It was to give that better experience and to base, if you speak to most Canadian companies who are dealing with the bank payment system, they're going to tell you that's one of their biggest pain points. It's not going to be finding good salespeople or finding operations or regulations. It is payments. It is very ugly here in Canada. So we said, okay, we're going to start by solving the biggest problem, and then we're going to trickle down from there. Where a lot of companies are just basically white labeling a bank and just sort of putting like the most minute layer software on top of it. We think of something called the financial interaction, how you onboard the client, how you get the pad, how you either distribute the funds and do the repayment. All that has to happen automatically in seconds. And in the back end, the tokenization, so no one has to store all the data. So we're thinking about not just that small part where you're moving the funds. We're thinking about how it all works between your clients. And, we think we can replicate that in not only in the lending industry, but other industries or anyone who needs to automate that workflow. So we do a lot of payment matching as well, letting you know how the status is. So, you can queue your operations to, if someone bounces a payment because they don't have funds, well, that's a different conversation if someone bounces a payment because there was a stop payment. So we have all those things that come back to, people like Turnkey, so that when it trickles down, you can have the best messaging for that client automatically instead of just kind of guessing like, didn't come through. I guess I'll call and find out. Automate the messaging for it.
And so when you're working with those banks in Canada, what kind of feedback are they giving you guys when they go from traditional means to Zūm Rails? What kind of feedback have they given you guys?
The good thing is that the banks love us. Some banks love us more than their existing platforms. So that's a good validation on our end, knowing, hey, the thing that Zūm is building is better than the thing that we're using. But it's a different kettle of fish at the end of the day because, it's such a big boat to move for them. But for us, it's, what started as 2 guys and now is 17. We've put a lot of emphasis on software. We are trying to build something that is accessible to anyone. It could be, small lender to a big bank themselves who are looking to use us. Everyone in between is, that's a great thing about solving a big problem. It's not just one niche. It's kind of the whole spectrum.
Yep, exactly. I love that. And how do you see, we are very strategic in the partnerships that we originate at Turnkey Lender. And so we're honored to have a partnership with your organization. But how do you see that partnership adding value to your organization today and going forward?
Yeah, so the way we've built Zūm Rails has been a very distributable product. So our goal was to not sell one by one, but have distribution channels like a turnkey lender who could offer Zūm Rails downstream, get the Zoom license, offer downstream, and have all the technology they need in the software. And then each lender from Turnkey has their own portal where they can access everything. So it just gave Turnkey a big competitive advantage in the market to have all these different payment options available to their lenders. Now they can start funding and dispersing loans instantly. So it's a huge value add for Turnkey, but also a really big value add for us because it just reinforces the technology we're building is being validated by the market.
Fantastic. And as you guys have built this and stood this up, I'm sure that you guys have leveraged a lot of your own internal experience and leveraged other funding sources and even accommodations to stay at as you built this. What do you think where was that moment where aha hit? Where was that moment where you got traction? And talk to me a little bit about that.
Miles, I'll let you finish this off. But when I told Miles about this idea, it was like someone told him sliced bread exists for the first time. And for me, is like I'm deep in payments. I am the guy who comes from the payment world. I'm 15 years in here. So I've kind of done thousands of different integrations with every type of company, heard all their pain points, got to put it in a little box. But before I met Miles, I put it in a box, and I went to a pitch competition run by my province, and they were like, oh, like, what is this? Like, how? Like, it was so far above like the pay grade that I couldn't dumb it down enough so that they could get it. No offense to them, but I ended up losing to a company that doesn't exist anymore that makes bone broth. And I was like, I'm basically saying we can skip all these government modernization projects and go straight to it. So I kind of got down on it myself for a little while. But then when I was like, hey, Miles, when we got to chat, this is great.
Yeah.
He saw it right away, where I'm probably a little bit more of a every day I'm looking at the transactions.
So I didn't quite see it right away because, as Marc said, payments are very complicated. So after he explained it to me 20 times, I really was all in and got it. It was super complicated. Anyways, but when I finally understood it, it was the aha moment because in my previous venture with Flinks, obviously I was the most customer-facing person as the chief sales officer. So I knew clients were always asking how could we help with onboarding, and then with payments was always the next step. Payments was always the next step, which is why I always referred business to Marc and to VersaPay. And then when we realized we could address not just a piece of the puzzle, we could solve the entire puzzle, the aha moment happened. I realized we're not just solving a small problem that someone could slot us in 18 months. We're solving their core problem where they'll readjust their roadmap to fit us in because we could literally enable their innovation, all their ideas through our APIs and gateways.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And as thought leaders, which you guys are in your space, I always love to ask this question: what advice or what guidance would you give anybody wanting to get into the fintech space or into the financial space from your perspective? What was the most useful information?
I wouldn't say the fintech space compared to starting another company is any different. I would say honestly, Marc knows I'm pretty delusional, and I always thought we were going to blow up when we didn't even have a line of code written. And he's like, "Why are you so positive?" I'm like, my positivity attracted other really positive people, and just a lot of it is mindset. Also, the heart, once you get started, you kind of just get into it. It's kind of weird. You don't see the day-to-day changes. I didn't realize we grew until I just took a step back and took a week off. I'm like, wait, how did we get here in 6 months? How did we get here in a year? So it's just going through the motion. And also, at the beginning, it's really not that stressful because no one's watching you. No one cares if you mess up. It's just Marc and I, we messed up 1,000 times. But now it's actually, if we mess up, now people are watching.
Exactly. I like that. Honesty, and it is what it is. That's how you do business, right? That's fantastic. Marc, would you add anything to that?
Find yourself a Miles. That helps. kind of speeds things up. He's a workhorse, and he is, what he said, it's the positivity. Like, I knew there's a problem, right? And I knew how to fix it. But, be honest, that's not enough at times. And Miles is like a great push for that. Because like I said,
Yeah, I'm partially blushing, but I'm also in Florida, so I'm a little red to begin with.
That's awesome.
I said it once, and I'll say it before you. The answer will never change when I'm asked that.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, it has been an honor and a privilege. We look forward to the partnership between Zūm Rails and Turnkey Lender. We're excited about what this represents for both organizations. To our audience, if you have any questions, any concerns, please feel free to reach out to myself or Marc or Miles. Miles, it looks like your value proposition is expanding exponentially. Marc as well. So kudos for your hard work and effort. And thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it.
Jeff, thanks so much for having us.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much.